Amanda, what is a DINK?
It's a dual income, no kids couple.
So I'm curious to know kind of how you even decided to be child free in a country that is obsessed with women
And our
giving us
bodies.
babies. Yeah,
Yeah.
and our bodies. Where did that journey begin for you? And I know you said relatively recently that that was a recent decision that you finally made. So I would be curious to know how you made that decision in the first place.
Honestly, if I think back to childhood, I think I always knew that I wanted to be child free. I remember growing up in Eldridge, Iowa, and thinking, I don't belong here. I do not belong in this town. I don't belong. I don't want to marry somebody from my high school. I don't want to live here. I want to spread my wings and fly, go see other places. I always wanted to travel. It's very strange as a woman growing up because a lot of the messaging when you're a teenager is don't get pregnant. Do not get pregnant. If you do, I'm going to disown you. Like that's the messaging I got from my family. And then the second you
Absolutely.
turn, yeah, which is scary. I'm like, oh my God, so it's really horrible to
Wait.
be
Well, it's a
pregnant and have
survival
child.
thing.
Can we
Yeah.
also talk about, though, that it's actually not that easy to get pregnant, and you don't even
Right.
realize that until you're grown up trying to get pregnant, and you're like, what the
Right.
fuck, man? All I ever heard was, don't get pregnant. And I'm like, you can only get pregnant like 3 days out of the whole month.
I just remember that. I remember that being the messaging, like, do not get pregnant. I mean, my parents literally said they would make me move out of the house. I would have to take care of myself. They would not help me. Like, it was scary. So I had that all of my teenage years. And then by the time I got into my mid 20s, I was like dating someone pretty seriously, and they were asking when I'm having kids, and the pressure started. And I hadn't even become a nurse yet. I didn't have anything financially like stable in my life. I just had a man. So they were already pushing me to have kids. And this continued all the way into my 30s. It was incessant. And then Tim and I got together, and we hadn't even been engaged yet, didn't even get married yet. His mom was pressuring us to, you guys can just have a baby before you get married. A lot of people do it. It's fine.
Isn't
No.
that crazy how that table turned?
So wild.
Yeah.
Like if
it
you
was
had if
so
you had
weird.
gotten pregnant in your early 20s, even if you were dating someone but you weren't married yet, the narrative around that would have felt
Right.
very different.
Right. It was just like I turned an age, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted a baby coming out of my uterus. I'm like, I'm still a child. I'm still a 25-year-old teenager. I can't do that.
Literally.
I can take care of myself. Like, what? So the pressure really gave me the ick. I got a lot of pressure from friends too. I had a lot of friends that were having kids a little bit younger, and I got a lot of that same messaging. Amanda, you're going to regret it if you don't have kids. And I think I was one of the first in my friend group to really start questioning it. I just never felt ready. I kept thinking there's going to be a time later that I'm just ready and I'll want to do it. There's going to be a time later on. And then later on came in my 30s, and I just still never wanted it. But I felt this weird shame and guilt with that decision. And Tim and I really didn't talk about it a lot before getting married, which is kind of crazy. I think both of us assumed we would have kids because that's the assumption for every couple, I feel like. And then it took us travel nursing and getting out of the South and the Midwest by ourselves to really talk about it and be like, actually, this is not something we want to do. We really like our lives the way it is, the way the world is going. I mean, to me, it feels unethical to bring a child here. I don't know. I'm starting to go down a path that I'm a little bit anti-natalist. I know that's not the truth for everybody, but for me,
Better than
I
being
can't do it.
pro-natalist.
It is. I'm just like, I can't. And not in this country. Maybe I would feel differently if I lived in a country that gave a shit about women, but we don't, and that's not the reality here. And I would feel horrible if I had a daughter. Like, she's going to have less rights than me. It makes me sick, to be honest.
I think what you said about growing up with the pressure and wanting to get out and realizing that very young, I relate to that so much. I grew up in Central Alabama. And I remember, so I went to Auburn University for a year, and I looked around at my peers, young women who were like, if I'm not engaged by the time we graduate, I won't get to have a candlelight, which is what happens in your sorority when you get engaged. And I remember I was like, the fuck?
It's like a game, yeah.
I was like,
Wait.
No, 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 no. And in my freshman year, I was like, gotta go, get me out of here. Because you just watch it. You watch the MRS degree happen. You watch young women essentially give up any desire to have a real career, progress in their career, because the concern is getting married and starting their family at a young age without anyone ever really discussing that at that age, your frontal lobe is not developed. You have no idea who you are and you don't know what you want out of life. And if you're a very small percentage of person who actually does, like, kudos, good for you. But the majority of young people have a lot of growing and a lot of learning to do before bringing another human onto this planet. And I think there's just so many people who refuse to recognize that. And I also think it gives me a lot of, my mom had me at 18. I was very much a surprise. And I have a lot of empathy for people who became parents young, whether by accident, which is my case, or because of societal pressure. I have a lot of empathy for them, but I'm also at this place where I'm like, but now we know better. So let's make choices based on the knowledge that we have at hand. And I think it's really admirable, the people like you, Amanda, who say, you know, I took the time to think about this. And I think for me, it is best to not have children. And when people really combat that, I'm like, why do you care? Why do you care if someone else has decided that they don't want kids? I think that's really bizarre.
You should see some of the comments we get.
I was just going to bring that up. So much of what you share on your Instagram is comments that you get on your videos about being child free. And I'm so curious to know how you deal with that kind of hate and backlash online. And maybe even generally speaking too, when you're speaking about politics and nursing and healthcare, which are very political topics, you know, how you kind of process these random people on the internet being like, you're a piece of shit for not having children.
I think if we had started this account maybe 3 or 4 years ago, those comments would really get to me because I was still in the process of like, am I firm in this decision? Because this is a huge decision. I can't really go back on it. Like once I get a certain age, like I don't know. I was really flipping like back and forth on, do I want kids or don't I? It's just such a huge decision. So I think if it were me 4 years ago, that shit really would have gotten to me. But now there's not anything somebody could say to me to be like, well, maybe I should have kids. Oh my God, maybe I am a piece of shit because I don't want kids. Like honestly, it makes me stronger. It makes me like, it fuels me. I love that I get underneath these people's skin because it's more telling about them than it is about me.
Right.
I'm sorry you regret it. You hate seeing a random woman online that's like, thank God I didn't have kids.
Yeah. It definitely,
it's always men.
It definitely is like a hit dog will holler.
Yeah.
You're invoking something in them that like they're not willing to admit that they wish they hadn't, or they wish they had taken more time to think about it, or perhaps chosen a different partner, or whatever it might be. That I think you're exactly right about. It says more about the person commenting and quote unquote hating on you.